Okay, good evening. I'm Gary Grasso. I have the privilege of being the mayor here in Burr Ridge. And tonight, we're here for a public safety forum. I put on my best Mr. Rogers sweater so that to give you the idea that this is going to be a give and take tonight, and audience participation. You've got three people involved in our legal system and our law enforcement system in DuPage County. And this is a village, of course, that is both DuPage and Cook. And you have our police chief, of course, that covers our village. So we have our state's attorney, Bob Berlin, from DuPage County. All of you know who he is. And you have our police chief, and everybody knows who he is, John Madden. And everybody should know this gentleman. This is Judge James McCluskey. He is an associate judge in DuPage County. I've had the privilege of knowing Judge McCluskey as a very fine lawyer and sometimes an opponent. And now that he's been on the bench, he brings all of that knowledge and experience to the people in DuPage County as a judge in DuPage County. So we're going to just talk about things as they come up. There is one little cameo that I'm going to do for the residents in Burr Ridge and remind them again that I was the chairman of the 911 board in DuPage County, but all of DuPage County, that is to say the Cook side, all of Burr Ridge, that is to say the Cook side and DuPage, are under our great 911 system in DuPage County. So if anybody has any questions about 911, I have enough experience to answer those. With no further ado, though, we're going to go with Mr. Berlin first and let him introduce himself and some things and some great stories he's been in the newspapers about, well-deserved. Bob?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, good evening, everybody. Bob Berlin, as Mayor Grasso said, DuPage County State's Attorney. I've been the State's Attorney for over 9 years now, but I've been a prosecutor for 32 years. So I have a lot of experience in the field. And let me just start out by saying, before I get into some of these numbers, DuPage County remains an incredibly safe place to live and raise a family. Some of these numbers are going to be a little disturbing, but the good thing is that we are addressing some of the issues that we see, which I'll start with. So I'm going to start with some good news, and that is our DUIs. You can see a steady decline the past few years. And we're really, since 2015, these are countywide DUIs are down 19%, which there's a number of reasons, I think, for that, part of which is the rise of the use in ride sharing, like Uber and Lyft and other companies like that, public safety message getting out there, but it's also enforcement, because we are very tough on DUI cases in DuPage County. But that's really great news in terms of public safety. Our misdemeanor cases down 31% over the past 3 years. Again, this is progress. It's great improvement. Fewer crimes, fewer cases in court. Obviously makes for a safer community. So here's the disturbing news. And this is the number of felonies. And you can see over the past really 5 years, since 2014, when we had 2,192 felonies in DuPage County, we have gone up. And really the past 3 years, we went up significantly. Really a 25% increase. 2019 compared to 2018, almost the same. We had 2,864 in 2019. There's a number of reasons for this, but I can tell you, and if we go actually to the next slide, you're going to see some of the huge increases, and I'm going to tell you some of the reason for it. Burglaries are up 82% in 3 years. That is significant. Many of these are car burglaries, and many are also people who hit our retail establishments when they go in with foil-lined bags with the intent to commit a theft. We charge them with burglary. because we take those very seriously. Half of our felony cases are committed by people that do not live in the county, at least half. Now, they're not all coming from Cook County, but many of them are. And this is the disturbing trend that we've seen here in DuPage County. Identity theft continues to be a huge problem. Again, a 37% increase over 3 years. The good news is, last year our residential burglaries were down. And remember, these are cases that are actually charged. So I don't have the actual number of crimes that were actually committed. But I do like to think that our police departments, I can tell you, are excellent, and I do like to think that we're solving most of these cases and they end up with an arrest and a prosecution. And then we have ag vehicular hijacking. So last year we charged 7 cases. Now that may not seem like a lot, but compared to where we were 3 or 4 years ago when we used to have 0 or maybe 1, it's a significant increase. We just had, in the past 2 months, we charged 4 separate ag vehicular hijackings, 2 in Downers Grove, 1 in Warrenville, and then we had 1 in Woodridge just the other week at a gas station on 75th Street. So very disturbing trend, but I can tell you that when these cases are charged, we are very public with them, and we send a message that when it comes to violent crime, we do not tolerate it, and there's a significant price to pay for violent crime that's committed in the county. Okay, moving on to heroin opioid. The opioid epidemic continues to be a huge issue in this county. I do not have the 2019 numbers yet from our coroner because they have not been finalized, but you can see the increase over the past few years. And I can tell you, when I first started in DuPage County, we had less than a handful of heroin possession cases. And last year we were up to 182. We actually went from 57 to 182 in less than 5 years, so we more than tripled. Very disturbing. And what's also disturbing is the correlation in our prescription pill cases. Those also went up exponentially from 26 to, I believe it's 81 in that same period. The reason that's so important is that 4 out of 5 heroin users begin their addiction using prescription medication. So we do see that direct link. So here's what we're doing about it, because we're really doing some great things with our opioid users and people that are addicted to these kinds of drugs. We have a drug court in this county that's one of the best in the country in terms of its success rate. It's not an easy program, but this program allows people to stay out of prison and get the treatment they need and get on with their lives and become productive citizens. The recidivism rate is generally over 30% for felons. For those who complete the drug court, it's 8%. So it really, this is an investment that we make that really pays huge dividends. We also, last year, started what's called the Focus Court, which stands for First Offender Call Unified for Success. These are all first offender defendants charged with drug possession. And we've put them all in front of one court, in front of one judge, so that they're handled on a consistent basis. And the whole idea here, again, is to get them treatment, get them the help they need. And most of these cases, the first offender probation, if they complete the program, cases are dropped, they're dismissed, they can get an expungement. But they only do that after completing the program and getting the treatment they need. This court, this Focus Court, received an award from the National Association of Counties. So it's been in existence now for 1 year, and it really has been a huge success. How we handle drug dealers is a different story, because we do make a big distinction between drug users, people who are addicted to drugs, and dealers. Dealers who sell these drugs for profit and they're killing people, we go after them, and they do pay a price. Every single opioid death, the coroner reports it to our office and law enforcement, and we work with the law enforcement agency to investigate that case. If we're able to identify the source, who the dealer was that sold those drugs to the victim, that caused a victim's death, we will charge drug-induced homicide, which is a Class X felony punishable by 6 to 30 years. We've had a lot of success with this statute, and I think it sends a message to the dealers that they have to be held accountable when they're selling these drugs that really do kill people. They have to be held accountable for what the results are. A few years ago, Illinois passed a version of the racketeering law. Historically, these cases were all handled by the U.S. attorneys down in Chicago. But a few years ago, we had the first RICO case here in Illinois. This was 31 defendants operating a heroin drug distribution ring in Cook and DuPage counties, they were bringing in about $1 million in profits a year. And the people at the top of that pyramid, some of them went to prison for as long as 20 years. But this was a successful operation. It took 6 months, multiple agencies, and there were actually 17 wiretaps that were used with the help of the DEA. So a tremendous amount of resources went into this particular case. So with low-level offenders, first-time nonviolent felons. So let's take, for instance, a retail theft. We have found through research the best way to handle these is through diversion. And they plead guilty in front of a judge, but they're not sentenced. And then they enter this diversion program. They appear in front of a citizens panel who asks some very difficult questions. And if they're admitted by us into the program, they'll have to do a number of things which may involve community service or working in the sheriff's work alternative program, making restitution. If they complete this program, they can withdraw their guilty plea, the case is dismissed, and they can get an expungement. This diversion court has a 97% success rate. So we've been very successful with this program. Obviously, we're careful and we pay attention to which defendants are going to get in, but it's a much better way of handling these cases. And again, the whole idea, we don't want to ruin someone's life for doing something stupid, like an 18 or 19-year-old that goes out and commits a retail theft. So a much better way of handling those cases. Okay, so a few more areas. I want to move on to juvenile delinquency. When I first started in DuPage County as a prosecutor, I was the head of the juvenile division. In 2004, we used to file over 1,100 delinquency petitions a year in 3 courtrooms. We're now down to 2 courtrooms, and last year we filed 446 petitions. So we made a lot of progress. The reason for that is we do a lot more diversion with our juvenile probation department. We make use of programs like peer jury because they're very successful. One thing I do want to point out is from 2018 to 2019, we filed 30 more petitions. Those 30 petitions were school threat cases. We had 30 school threat cases that we filed in 2019. These are kids, for the most part, who will post something on Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram threatening harm to people at a school or threatening harm to teachers at a school. And obviously, we take them very seriously. The idea here is not punitive. Juvenile court is not punitive in nature, but it's to get them help. Any child, any student that will post something like that, even if they think it's a joke, is crying out for help. And what the advantage of juvenile court is, not only is the minor a party to the case, but their parents are parties as well. We get the parents in front of a judge, and we can assess what's going on in that house, and we can get them the services and the help they need. And again, we're not giving these kids a permanent record, but we're getting them the help they need. And obviously, we have to be very proactive when it comes to protecting our schools. We have a school safety task force with our regional superintendent of schools, Darlene Rossetti. We have all the support of the police chiefs and the police departments in the county. And again, it's about being proactive and trying to get the kids who need help before it turns into something a lot more serious. Crimes committed by juveniles, I just want to bring up an example of the importance of public policy. In 2016, the General Assembly changed the automatic transfer statute. It used to be that 16 and 17-year-olds, 15 and 16-year-olds who committed armed robbery with a gun were automatically transferred to adult court. They changed that, and actually it includes 17-year-olds. Now we have to file a petition. The first year after that statute went into effect, Chicago had over 1,100 carjackings. 70% of those were committed by juveniles, many of them gang members. The point being is that they know what the laws are, and they know that the punishment is much different in juvenile court. So what happens in Springfield really has an enormous impact on public safety. Just briefly, our Children's Center, we have agreements with all the police departments in the county to investigate and charge and prosecute most physical and sexual abuse cases against children. This is a crime that's in every community. It knows no boundaries. And you can see the numbers of cases the past few years. It's very disturbing. And there's a lot more out there, unfortunately. I know the sheriff has just started, he's put some investigators on what's called his speed unit, and they're actually patrolling the internet looking for people obtaining or distributing child pornography, because many of them, it's just a precursor to abusing children. So again, we do a great job. I just put these numbers up there because they're serious cases. We've heard a lot about bail reform. Big topic, not only here, but really all over the country. And Illinois, 2 years ago, beginning of 2018, initiated or enacted a new law, the Bail Reform Act, and they divided crimes into Category A and Category B offenses. And our judges are following the law. But your Category B offenses are what they determine to be less serious. The Category A's are, shootings, sexual assaults, armed robberies. But with Category B's, there is a presumption of no cash bail. So we're getting a lot more recognizance bonds, and with the Category A offenses, the bails have been set lower. And I'm not faulting our judges at all. Our judges follow the laws as they should. But here's the result of this statute. Since it went into effect, our FTAs, and that stands for failure to appear, people that don't show up in court, for Category A's, they're up 42%, and for Category B's, they're up 58%. That is a significant increase. And really, frankly, it's an unacceptable increase. And I have sent these numbers not just to our own judges, but to members of the General Assembly. I've been in touch with the leaders of the House and the Senate, and we're working. I'm trying to get them to change this law. It has to be reformed. I absolutely agree we shouldn't keep people in jail because they can't afford to post bond, but we also need to make sure that people who are a danger to public safety stay in custody while their case is pending. because of the risks that are associated with it. One of those carjackings that we charged in Downers Grove last month, one of those defendants, 19 years old, was out on bond on an ag UUW case out of Cook County. It was a recognizance bond. So while he's out on bond, he comes out here and commits 3 different carjackings. That can't happen, and that's what we're trying to change. The last thing I want to say is this. The last slide is just the importance of community relations with the police. The police are only as effective and can only be as effective with the support of the community. They cannot solve crimes without the help of the citizens and the residents, and that means that there's a trust level. We are incredibly lucky in this county that we have such professional police departments, professional police officers, and we get that cooperation and support from our residents. When crimes happen routinely, residents like you will call the police, give them doorbell video or video from businesses. Eyewitnesses come forward, and that makes their job easier, and they give us a better case, and we have better success. Unfortunately, it's not that way in every county in the state, and it's something that we work very hard at, and it's really, really important. But you know, I can tell you this on behalf of myself and all of the attorneys in my office. We appreciate everything that the police do in this county. We work very well with them, but we know that the bar is very high, and rightfully so. The public demands professionalism from our police departments. They demand professionalism from us, and that's what we try and strive to do every single day.
Bob, thank you very much. And so I think we'll hear from Judge McCluskey next, and then finally the chief, and then we'll throw it out for questions, and I'll have a few comments too. So Judge McCluskey.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you.
I take great pleasure in telling a judge he can do something.
Thank you, Gary. I first met Gary Grasso in 1979. We both got out of law school, I believe, the same year. And he was working downtown, and we were doing about the same thing, insurance defense work. It was on the civil side. We tried a lot of cases, but it was mostly civil cases. I practiced law for 39 years and went on the bench at the young age of 64. So I've been on the bench about 2 years. There's another judge in the audience, is Rick Felice, who went to law school with. He's a full circuit judge, and I'm glad to have him as a colleague on the bench. There's 46 judges in DuPage County. You have approximately 983,000 citizens in DuPage County. Every job, for every judge, it's a county-wide position. There's 15 full circuit judges and 31 associate judges. There's about a judge for every 22,000 people in DuPage County. I'm an associate judge. I was appointed by the circuits approximately a year and 9 months ago. What occurs with an associate judge, they're assigned to a courtroom. I happen to be the eviction judge, and I also do the criminal forfeitures, which runs into people are driving with license revoked, or they're driving with drugs in their car. They're subject to forfeiture of their vehicles. There's approximately, I would say, 30 forfeiture cases that I handle, and I handle all the forfeiture cases in DuPage County a week, which if you multiply that by 50 weeks, you're talking about 1,500 forfeiture cases, okay? Again, these are people are driving with a revoked license, may be driving around for the past 4 or 5 years, and the police effectively in DuPage County, in my opinion, are very vigilant in doing checks with respect to license plate checks and stopping people who are driving without a license, or if they in fact have illicit and illegal drugs in their car. Let me tell you a little bit about what every associate judge does. Associate judges, besides their own calls, If they were in the civil division, chancery division, if they were in the divorce division, which they call the family law division. They also sit as a bond in bond court, okay? That's very important to public safety. You know, the police basically do their job out on the street, and they investigate crime and effectuate some arrests. The state's attorney is the one who then effectually prosecutes that crime, okay? And the judges are the ones who adjudicate the crime. The important thing is, and this is pretrial, is bond hearings, which Bob Berlin, state's attorney, spoke to, has to do with bail and bail reform. I was the president of the Illinois State Bar Association last year, and I had the honor of appointing the chief felony, the presiding judge of the felony court, Liam Brennan, to the Illinois Supreme Court Committee on Bail Reform. So there is a bail reform committee that is looking at statistics and looking at the continuity and consistency of the judges in the entire state of Illinois. There's 102 counties in the state of Illinois. DuPage is one of those 102 counties, second most populous county in the state of Illinois. There is approximately, and Bob, you might correct me, 25, 26 circuits, because some down in southern Illinois, there will be 11 counties and 1 circuit because of the population. DuPage is its own circuit. So we handle all of the associate judges, primarily handle all the bond hearings before the state's attorney and the public defender. We have the, I'd say, the pleasure, or not the pleasure, but more of we have the convenience and the benefit of having 2 public defenders in every courtroom and 3 state's attorneys in every courtroom that handle criminal matters. In a bond hearing, which is after an arrest, there's a public defender available to every defendant who comes before a judge, and there's a state's attorney who then presents the charges. The state's attorney will present the charges to a judge who is sitting in bond court. Every judge sits in bond court at least approximately, sometimes some judges once 1 week out of the year. I had the pleasure of doing 3 weeks, 2 in November and 1 at Christmas time. And you have to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I was the judge during Christmas and during Thanksgiving that I had to have a phone available. If I got a call at any time by a police officer in the municipalities that are contained within DuPage County, and something such as Burr Ridge, even though it's Cook and DuPage, if I get a call from a police officer at 3 o'clock in the morning, I have to answer that call. If I do not answer that call within 5 minutes, I get another call from the sheriff's office. It goes through the sheriff's office. Sheriff's office will call me again. Luckily, at my age, I don't sleep as well as I used to, so I'm available to answer the phone call. So what happens is they're calling for a search warrant, okay? If you have somebody who is severely impaired, but they refuse a breathalyzer, the judge has to order a search warrant. The police officer has to do a lot of paperwork. They have to put together a complaint and a search warrant, and it's on an iPad. Years ago, a police officer would show up to your home. And let me tell you, I talked to some of these judges who were judges a long time ago, and they said, years ago, and they said, their neighbors would approach them and say, you have a problem at your house? There's police officers showing up in the middle of the night all the time. That's what you do. So there's a judge available 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year to assist the police department with respect to their search warrants. Okay. As of January, there will be arrest warrants will be available by an iPad. So fortunately, we get to go to hook up our iPad. It's available. We go directly online and we do video conference with the police officers. And the police officers then have to be sworn. They have to be sworn to their complaint that the sworn complaint they put together, and the search warrant. Some of these search warrants are very, very, very detailed, and you have to read those before you swear in the police officer, and then the judge electronically signs the search warrant, and then it could be effective. Certainly when you're dealing with somebody who is driving very impaired and refuses to take a breathalyzer, you have to do a blood draw. And then you have to take them to the hospital, do the blood draw. But the search warrant has to be issued by a judge in DuPage County to do something like that. Let me tell you a little bit about the bond hearing. When you go in a bond hearing, every judge at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, after they're finished with their call, sits in a bond hearing if they're assigned to what's called the duty judge. And the duty judge sits there until all of the defendants who have been arrested have been basically set for their bond hearing. Public defender has a discussion with every defendant and interviews every defendant. State's attorney presents the charges. What they do is present what the charge is. They present the criminal history that's involved with respect to the individual or the alleged criminal or the defendant, excuse me. And then what happens is the judge has to make a decision. Sometimes you only have 3 or 4. In the afternoon at 4 o'clock when you start, you might have 30, okay? So whatever it takes, you have to finish. And you then go to the jail on the weekends, and you hear the bond hearings on Saturday and Sunday, and if it's a holiday, you hear it on a holiday. And you have the juvenile hearings also by video. Our juvenile hearings are video with the Kane County Juvenile Department because that's where they're housed. There's a joint effort between DuPage County and Kane County for the juvenile hearings. Now, what do we look at when we look at a bond hearing? The judge specifically has literally probably to decide a bail or a bond, maybe 4 minutes, maybe less, okay? Because the state's attorney presents the charges, the state's attorney then gives a criminal history, and what is important with the state's attorney, Bob Berlin mentioned, has to do with the failures to appear, FTAs. Because what you want to assure people that they're available in court so that they can be arraigned on their charges. And if they're not there, then it's very costly to the county because then you have to assign some police officers to go out and bring the defendants in. So you look at a history of failure to appear. If you have a defendant who has multiple charges, multiple arrests, some convictions, and never shows up in court, that's a consideration the judge has to make. The second consideration a judge has to make is, what is the threat to the community, okay? When I have a situation where I have a domestic violence situation that just occurred the night before, may involve alcohol, the judge has to make the determination because you could have a no contact order or stay away order. That's a piece of paper to assure that the spouse or the significant other may be safe the next day. The judge has to make the decision whether to release this defendant at that point in time because it's a violent act. Violence is a very important thing that the judge has to consider. The third thing the judge has to consider is the ability to pay for the bond. Like State's Attorney Berlin said, we don't want people in jail just because they can't afford it. We have to look at the nature of the crime and make sure that the charge is one of not a violent nature and the failures to appear. Because if people can't afford it, and the public defender will tell the judge, this is how much money they can post in bail. We're not there to have a high bail just to keep people in jail. We have to consider those other factors. State's Attorney Berlin is correct. There's Category A and Category B offenses. But you also have to consider the failures to appear when you set the bond. If they're nonviolent type of considerations, the presumption is that you give them a personal recognizance, a signature. They can go on their signature. Some of the cases, and this has been a big issue, is the consistency of setting those bonds. And I know that the Illinois Supreme Court is currently looking at statistics on certain categories of crimes and whether there's consistency and what do the judges from county to county set the bonds at. That is a big issue. That is an issue that the Supreme Court has to look at. But what I think is most important to remember, you should never eliminate the judge's discretion to set a bond. If you just had a standard and say if this is in this category, it's a personal recognizance no matter what. then what you're doing is you're taking away the person who is right before in doing the judging and looking at the defendant and looking at the history of the defendant, because all the defendants come before the judge. They do it by video conferencing. It's a big screen. You can see them. They interact with you. You read them your rights, and you don't allow them to prejudice their rights in a pre-trial hearing. We do have pre-trial services, an excellent program of probation services that will talk to and interview the defendants immediately after the bond hearing or soon thereafter in order to present to the judge to lower the bond. If the bond is set too high, there always is the judge who the case is assigned with. They always have the ability to lower the bond so that the defendant could be on their own personal recognizance. That's kind of like I've given you a real thumbnail sketch of how it occurs in court. But that's how we work together with the state's attorney, the public defender, and the police. And police are very important. I find that in DuPage County, I think you have a fine police force in all of the jurisdictions in DuPage County. Very professional, very polite, and they basically, they're very, in my opinion, they're very forthright. And just as a little side note, your sheriff, I was talking to him yesterday. His wife was a victim of well, it wasn't a car theft, but it was a car break-in. Unfortunately, what she did was she left her car open at night and at 3 o'clock in the morning. The sheriff was, I don't know why he was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, but he was up, and he saw that his wife's car was being broken into, okay? It wasn't much to break into. She didn't lock the car, and that's what, that's the one big thing the police officers say, kind of help us out here, lock your car at night, And whether you believe it or not, there's a lot of people that just leave their car open, and they don't. And some people leave their keys in the car, okay? And I mean, you just can't do that because you're just asking for problems. The other thing the sheriff mentioned is he has a video doorbell. He recommends everybody should have a video doorbell because he ran after the offenders. He didn't catch them, but he caught the plate on the video doorbell. So it's very likely they'll be apprehended. So that's all I have to say.
Judge McCluskey, thank you very much. You can see how passionate Judge McCluskey is about his recent elevation to the bench, but he is a fine civil servant, a fine lawyer, and we've got a great judge here. And then we'll get to the chief. But as the mayor of Burr Ridge, I'm fond of using our motto that Burr Ridge is a very special place, which we are. And one of the reasons that we are a very special place is because we have such a fine police department. And the reason that we have such a fine police department is because we have such a great chief. We are fortunate to have Chief Madden. I knew him when I was the mayor before. He was our deputy then. I had the privilege of nominating him to become chief. We have a close working relationship, and I certainly, my job is made easier. The trustees' jobs are made easier because of Chief Madden. And so with all due respect, Chief Madden.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you. And I'm going to segue right off the judge. We talked about burglary to vehicles. In Burr Ridge, very low crime rate, very safe community. But unfortunately, these things happen everywhere. And when the judge says you got to lock your vehicles and don't leave maybe a wallet or a laptop in the car, you're dead on there, Judge. You're dead on. Unfortunately, last year we had 11 vehicles stolen out of Burr Ridge, and all 11 vehicles had their key fobs in the car. So what these individuals are doing, they're cruising around the municipalities, not always at night, sometimes during the day, and they're checking door handles. We've got a lot of Ring videos that residents forward to us, and what they do is they walk down the street and they're flipping door handles. If it opens, they jump in and they hit the button. If it starts, they're gone. If not, they just move on. They'll rummage through, maybe steal whatever is left in the vehicle, and they'll move on. Unfortunately, it's kind of escalated to where some of these individuals are armed, and we've got that on video too. Crime prevention's a big part of this, and I try to meet with homeowners associations and speak with the residents, and because you don't expect it to happen in communities like ours, but these individuals, they're going to go where the nice property is, and it's communities here in DuPage County. So that's, and in Cook County, and there's the county line right here, that presents challenges for us too. I've had colleagues beg State's Attorney Berlin to annex their communities into DuPage County because of those challenges. And for one example, a retail theft charge in Cook County, there is a threshold where it goes from a misdemeanor to a felony, and that's a $500 threshold. And the State's Attorney in Cook County said, "Don't call us unless it's over 1,000." So that's just created. Even though the law says one thing, and that prevents a different aspect for us and challenges, especially with most of our retail on the Cook County side of town. So we have a fantastic relationship with the State's Attorney's Office. I personally worked with Mr. Berlin in an effort, project by the DuPage County Chiefs of Police. We created a new task force, a county-wide task force last year. Before that, there was 2 in the county on a smaller scale, Major Crimes Task Force, which I've been intimately involved in most of my career. Last year, we created 1 task force, 1 county-wide task force, and there's about almost 300 officers assigned to this task force and 11 components that all specialize in different functions in law enforcement. So we're very proud of that, and literally worked hand in hand with Mr. Berlin to get that effort off the ground, and it's up and running and doing fantastic work. Mr. Berlin talked about peer jury. Peer jury, a very valuable youth diversion program. We've been part of peer jury probably 20 years. Recently, within the last couple of years, the program that was hosted by the township, Downers Grove Township, it ceased, and then we created a combined effort with Downers Grove, Clarendon Hills, Hinsdale, and Oak Brook, and Willowbrook to create our own peer jury. And it's fantastic results. It really helps us work with the juveniles. DuPage County, in my opinion, is far ahead of any other county in the state of Illinois. I'm very proud to be part of DuPage County in law enforcement. We have a radio system that's second to none for the police officers. It's a county-wide system, again, that allows mutual aid seamless, and that's a big thing. If something major happens in Warrenville, which is the other side of the county, I can send a Burr Ridge officer, and on his radio he can turn it to a channel and have total communication with Warrenville officers. It's a phenomenal system, and we're very lucky to have it. And actually, Mayor Grasso, when he was the chairman of the ETSB, is responsible for that. So if we get the tools that we need to do the job, we're going to get the job done correctly. And we have the tools. We have a great working relationship with the State's Attorney's Office. When Mr. Berlin was going through the statistics up there, and I was thinking on a smaller scale, I would address some of these crimes that are occurring in Burr Ridge. So we talked about burglary, not so much residential, but we've seen an uptick in car burglaries and retail thefts. Residential burglaries is pretty low, knock on wood. Identity theft, I can't tell you, I think I wrote it down in my office and I forgot, I brought it out. I think I've received 12 phone calls that have a warrant out for my arrest from Social Security. You know, it's crazy, and other scams that come up. And I actually just received a communication from Social Security today because they're starting a campaign to push the word out to educate citizens on these scams. It's pretty serious. In reference to some of the challenges we've had, narcotics still is an issue with opioid addiction, and Mr. Berlin covered that. Each of our officers has 2 doses of Narcan that they carry with them. We have Narcan in our evidence processing. Unfortunately, because not only are we dealing with heroin, we're dealing with fentanyl, which is extremely, extremely dangerous. An extremely tiny bit can kill somebody. So when the officers are processing evidence, searching a car, wherever they're doing this activity, they have to have Narcan ready to go. Narcan and AED. So that's what it's come to. It's terrible. And Mr. Berlin covered that. So we're dealing with it on a lower, of course, lower numbers, but we've had, I've brought officers in front of the village board for life-saving awards for Narcan use. It happens here. Identity theft is still an issue. I talked a little bit about the scams. So mostly, as far as, with the statistics that Mr. Berlin covered, on a smaller level, we experience the same. But what's most important is the ability to work with the state's attorney's office and prosecute a case. And we've got a fantastic working relationship with the state's attorneys. And it has to be that way. It has to be that way. Other challenges we have is the legalization of cannabis. That started January 1st. And the law is clear as mud on that. There's a whole list that the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police are working with and communicating with legislators to try to get another trailer bill to clarify some of these, some of the parts of the law, especially, for example, with relative to use on your property, maybe in a backyard, it's on your property, but the law is very vague on certain things. I attended a panel 2 weeks ago out in Will County with Cook County state's attorneys there, and the state's attorneys from Cook County and Will County, we were asking questions, and they don't have answers right now. And it's because that's the way the law is written. So it's a challenge. The officers have a lot of questions, so we're working with that. So with that,
Thank you.
for questions?
Yes, and just a couple more statements from me. First of all, I want to recognize that here tonight we have trustee and Mayor Pro Tem Guy Francis is in the audience. And I also want to, again, reiterate for the people on the Cook County side of Burr Ridge that, of course, our fine police department and our chief cover them and keep them safe. But the 911 system that I spoke about, that is the DuPage ETS 911 system, I made sure that also includes Cook County. So that great state-of-the-art system, 2 state-of-the-art systems were open in 2018. One is in Addison, one is on the campus in Wheaton. I dare anybody to tell me there are better systems in America. Any chance you are in either one of those neighbors, either in Addison or in Wheaton, stop in and see that facility. That facility is protecting everybody in DuPage County and the Cook side of Burr Ridge. I wanted to give a personal experience on this Social Security scam thing. It just happened to me recently. I'm a little bit older than Judge McCluskey, even though we graduated from law school about the same time. And so I was going through my Social Security, Medicare, and all of that other stuff that you have to go through when you get mature and seasoned in life. The Social Security Administration set up a phone call for me on a specific date at a specific time. It was going to be a 2:45 call in the afternoon. And at precisely 2:45, my phone rang with what appeared to be a government phone number. And, a person identified themselves from Social Security and started to ask me and verify information, but he was getting me to verify my own information. And I started, finally, the light went on, and then all of a sudden the phone rang again on my cell phone, and I noticed it came up as a Social Security number from the Department of Social Security. So I said, well, excuse me, I have to flip over, and I flip over, and the woman says, hi, this is so-and-so from the Social Security Administration for your appointed call. I said, well, I have the Social Security, they already called on the other line. He said, oh no, It can't be right. So I said, okay, and I put the two of them together. And they started going at it. Who are you? Who are you? What's your badge number? We don't have badge numbers. It was strange. I finally figured out who was the real Social Security person and disconnected the other one. But that's how sophisticated these scams are getting. Somehow someone got information that I was going to get a call from Social Security at 2:45 in the afternoon, and I got a call from someone else. I immediately, of course, told the Woodbridge facility that they should be investigating who's setting up these calls because someone's selling that information, as far as I was concerned. So please be aware, especially the elderly. They're getting their identity stolen, their life savings, and we read it almost every day, but it's happening locally, and we have to be vigilant. So with that, any questions from the audience of any of our guests tonight? Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, I wanted to ask the chief, does Narcan work for fentanyl, heroin, all the opioids, or just?
It works for the opioid. It really works. For fentanyl, what we're seeing is we might have to give them 2 or 3 doses. Usually when the person is just, it's a straight heroin overdose, they're sprayed and they jolt, they wake up. They're very agitated, sometimes very mad. Our experience has been, if we hit them once and they get a little groggy, hit them twice, maybe the paramedics get there 2 or 3 times, that's fentanyl.
Anyone else? Yes.
I have a question relating to the cooperation between Brookside and DuPage and DuPage. Like recently in my neighborhood, which is on the Cook side of Burr Ridge, there was a car theft in the middle of the night. And I know that the theft is there, but supposedly the car has been seen in DuPage County. What kind of cooperation is there between police forces, investigative detectives, to see if they can't catch the guys that took the call?
There's 100% cooperation. It doesn't matter which side of the county line it occurs. When a car is stolen and we're notified, we put it out through a statewide broadcast. The information on the car is registered through a statewide computer system, so if the plates run or the VINs run, it comes up stolen. When there's a broadcast that goes out over the radio. All the area communities it's a statewide frequency, so everybody's listening. So it can happen here, and the car can end up. I'll give you an example. We had a car stolen in Burr Ridge. It ended up in Riverdale. So it was recovered by Riverdale police, and the offenders fled, but they didn't catch them. So they were aware that that car was stolen, and when they ran the plate, it came up stolen, and they went into action. So where it's on the county side, that comes into prosecution. That would be a difference. And let me clarify that the mayor had a point. That we're kind of unique, for the most part, split down the middle. We have a working relationship with the 5th District Court, Cook County Court in Bridgeview. That's our branch that we go to the 5th District, and the state's attorney there that runs that, the supervisor state's attorney that runs that branch, is very cooperative with us. You know, it's what comes out of Ms. Fox's office downtown, that on the prosecution side, that's a little different. But we have 100% cooperation and a good working relationship with the Cook County State's attorneys also. So I hope did I answer your question?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious what the follow-up is. So far, he hasn't gotten his car back, and we're just curious, is there any chance it will come, or
Well, if it's recovered, he'll get it back, or he or she will get it back. The owner will get the car back if it's recovered, depending on what kind of condition it's in. Sometimes these vehicles are used for other crimes. Sometimes they're used for other car burglaries or car thefts. That's been our experience.
Someone else had their hand up. Yes.
We recently got hit with a church scam where we received a text from a parish priest that said, "I need your help." And then we said, like, "What do you need?" And then the next thing was, well, we need iTunes cards for people who are, and it was legitimate, but how did they get our cell phone numbers? Our church doesn't have our cell phone numbers. And do you report that kind of thing? And how often is that investigated? And how often do they find the people who are doing these scams? Because for our older people, they see a priest, he needs help, they're, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the procedure for those telephone scams that are they're so sophisticated? Like yours was very sophisticated.
Yes. First off, you never hesitate to call us. You can always call us and talk to an officer, call 911. Unfortunately, a lot of these scams, these phone calls are being made outside of Illinois, outside of the country. That's why the federal agencies are involved.
This is a text message, but like, you know.
It could also be coming.
Very convincing, there's no voice, so you don't really, you know that it was the person.
Yeah, there are different scams, and they look for gift cards. And Apple is one of them, and that's how they want to convert the money, and then send the gift cards to a certain address. But unfortunately, you just have to be hyper aware. Even if you get a text message from a number that you're not aware of with a link. I've gotten one from FedEx. In the past week, I've gotten 3 text messages from FedEx saying, hey, John, it says my name, John, set up your FedEx delivery. And there's a hyperlink to you click on. This is a text message. It's a scam. I have nothing coming from FedEx, so I know it's a scam, and I just delete it.
Well, who invested? I mean, we did, one of the parishioners told the person who was texting, because she got, I'll meet you in the church parking lot at 7 o'clock, and then she called the Darien police, and they came at 7 o'clock, and the person didn't, whoever they was getting called didn't show up. It was Our Lady of Peace in Darien. But they asked, well, do you prosecute, or do you look for who's doing this, or is there any way to find them? Have you ever been successful in prosecuting any of those people who are doing these things?
Very rarely are we successful. Very rarely.
And how often do they get what they want? I mean, what's the percentage of times that they're actually bilking senior citizens?
Unfortunately, it happens. I remember being a young patrolman, and of course, the social media wasn't available at the time. And I received a call from a frantic son whose mother was living at King Brevard House. And he was out of state, and he knew she was getting scammed over the telephone. And I visited her. I was a detective at the time, I should say, and I went there. And she had $10,000 sitting on the table that she was ready to send to this person who was on the phone. And the person actually called when I was there, so I was able to talk to him. Were we able to, we tried to trace it, and now I'm talking about probably 20 years ago. So technology wasn't then what it is now. We weren't successful, but this is going on forever. And they do prey on the elderly. They do. And they are successful sometimes. And, you know, I sat down with my mother, who's elderly, and I went down the whole list, and she's gotten phone calls. She was a victim of attempted victim of a Facebook scam. You know, where they're connecting, getting information off of Facebook, and then they call and say, this is your grandson, Brian. I need help. You know, it's terrible. It's terrible. As far as, have you seen any cases come in, Bob, to your office? No. It's tough. We reach out to the federal agencies. You know, there's a Nigerian scam that come through. You know, I'm a prince. I have $5 million. I need an account. You know, it's terrible.
It's so sophisticated where it's a parish priest.
Right.
You text, I need help. You think you need, you know, and.
Right.
And the thing is, they did exactly what they're supposed to do. They called Darien. Darien went there and tried to catch this individual.
I don't even know if the person was local. I mean, it wasn't the priest's cell phone number that was texting, so.
Right. But thanks for bringing this up, because it's part of what we're trying to get, and it's being filmed. And this is about information and people understanding that they, you know, they have to be vigilant about it. There's only so much the state's attorney can do, the police can do, a judge can do, and by then it's usually too late, frankly. And so it's important that the message get out to the public that you need to be aware. You need to be, unfortunately, we all like to be trusting. You cannot trust anybody that's asking you for this type of information, this type of help, through a text, through an email, through a voice message, you should be suspicious. And so thank you for asking the question, because that's the message that has to get out. Judge?
Yeah, I was going to say, it happens to almost everybody. Judge Felice and I, as being past presidents of the Illinois State Bar Association, we also were members on the board of directors of the Illinois State Bar Association Mutual Insurance Company, which insures lawyers for professional negligence. And I can't tell you in the last couple of years how many times we got calls from lawyers who were scammed on escrow accounts, things of nature where they were passing money through escrow accounts, and they were acting as the escrowee, and they didn't realize what the whole idea was. Is they got their escrow account, and then they basically drained their escrow account, and then the lawyers wanted to have coverage for that, and the insurance companies don't provide coverage for that, okay? And it's not part of your negligence policy. But I saw it, and I know Judge Felice saw it, with respect to attorneys. And you would think they would know better. But they've been fleeced with respect to their escrow accounts.
Was it investigated? Did they find who was doing it?
I didn't get that far into the procedure with respect to that, but I know that our focus was on whether we were going to provide coverage or not to the attorneys, and it's not written into the policy. Okay, so we didn't do the investigation to determine who the person was who committed the fraud. We just, yes, Judge
My
Felice.
end is very, very important. In these instances, what these people have done is they actually captured the lawyer's email address and created false wire instructions to direct a lender to wire money to a fictitious location, so they could actually get the money transferred electronically on a wire. Oftentimes it was too late once it was determined that it was fraudulent because the money was gone, sometimes out of the country. So be very careful if you're ever transferring money by wire to be sure that that's done properly and never give instruction information out. And that's a very dangerous area, and there's a lot of scams in that area.
Yeah, I'd like to point this out. His name is Felice, F-E-L-I-C. We use the word fleece. That's not him.
Right. Yes?
To expound on that, we just had a neighbor who got his email hacked. And what happened is somebody got into his email account and could redirect any mail to another account. And so there was out of his whole contact list, there was a message sent out, oh, I'm in Spain, I need a gift card for my daughter. I mean, and some of his friends were calling him and saying, and he finally figured out that his emails were going to another address, and he had to work with Comcast to get it unforwarded. And it was not only just the email, it was the inbox and the send box could separately be forwarded to a different email.
Yep. Again, be skeptical, don't be trusting. Yes?
A shout out to the chief and his wonderful team of officers. I'm a past participant of the Citizens Police Academy, a wonderful program. I encourage all the residents to learn about it and perhaps participate in it. We live on Lori Lane, and beginning of December, there were actually 3 cars that were burglarized. Not really broken into because they didn't have to break in at all because they weren't locked. And I'm aware of this because it was actually the young people living next to us that left their car unlocked with their company laptop, etc. And the police came to our home. I'm curious in terms of others in the neighborhood, how they would find that information out to even know that the bad guys are in the neighborhood. We happened to find out about it because the police actually came to our residence because of the close proximity. We were to check to see if we had cameras, etc. And then the other thing is we're old. We don't do silly things like that. You know, we did our silly things earlier, so we're done with that. And we pull into the garage, but I never previously thought about asking our overnight guests to lock their cars. And I've lived in Burr Ridge all my life, which is means that it's actually before it was Burr Ridge. And so I think encouraging people to communicate that to their guests too, because I know I personally, would always lock my own car, but I'm not sure, as a guest was spending the night with us, that I would say to them, did you lock your car? I'm now going to do that, but that's because of the recent, things that were happening close by to our home.
Well, there's a couple, I could tell you in northern Illinois, all the counties in northern Illinois, there's a campaign to get people to lock their cars and don't leave valuables in the car in sight. We push it out on social media through the village's Twitter account, the village's Facebook account. The police department does not have, we don't have our own Twitter or Facebook account. So we push it out through the village, and we have Nixle, Nixle.com. You can go there, and you could register to receive alerts from us. And we push out informational alerts. We don't use it to advertise. We don't use it to pass on information about concerts. And when you give us your email, it's for law enforcement communication. And so I say that because people don't want to give out their emails and receive spam emails and unwanted emails. So we push out information. That's a way we reach. If it's something extremely, extremely serious going on, we have reverse 911. So that's an instant system it'll call your cell phone, it'll call your house phone, your landline phone. That's how we push out. Now, that night, what the officers will do, they'll go door to door in your neighborhood. And that's for two reasons. Number one, they're letting people know what happened, and they're looking to see if somebody saw something. And then nowadays, the Ring doorbells, any kind of camera system like Ring, I don't want to just say Ring, and try to get video from their systems. Many homes in our town have sophisticated video surveillance, perimeter surveillance, which helps us out greatly. Another thing we have is a subdivision surveillance camera program. We have 13 subdivisions that have signed on, and how that works is the homeowner associations purchase the camera hardware, and they partner with the village. The village handles the connection into our data network servers at the village hall, and the village also maintains that system moving forward. We've had great success with those cameras. It's a passive system. I don't have any personnel monitoring it. The officers have the ability to pull it up in the car if something's going on. But most of the time, when something happens, we go back to the cameras. Just last week, we went to a subdivision camera and found the offender we're looking for, the offending vehicle. So very effective. I know that there are subdivisions out there that don't have it, that are working with us, but it's an excellent program. Lastly, there's Smart 911. I failed to mention this earlier. It's available through our public safety answering point, DuCom, and that's in Wheaton, and that's our central communications system. They handle all our dispatching. So I encourage you to go into Smart 911 and enter in any data. You can enter in data about pets, what's in the house, your cars. Anything that you would normally give a dispatcher when you call 911, you could pre-enter it in. You can give a description of your home. If there's something unique about your home, if it's set way back, you could put that in there. So that information is given to the officers. It's a time saver. It is.
Yeah.
And it's on our website, the Village of Burr Ridge. There's a link for Smart 911.
Yes, and it's important so that when the first responders show up, they know, if there are ambulatory problems in the house, people or medicines, they'll ask you for that. There's someone diabetic, is someone taking certain medications? Is there a communication issue? Can someone speak or not speak? All of this is important. So in one stroke, we tell you not to give out your information, and then we tell you, but give it to us because it could save lives, which it can. Let me give you two other things, and I only learned this from Chief Madden. Not only when you leave your keys in the car and the car starts up, most of us all have what? Garage door openers. Never thought about it. He reminded me. That's another reason why you want to lock your car and not leave your keys in it, because, again, the thieves will take the path of least resistance, and if your garage door opens and they don't think you're home, guess what happens next? Okay, and the other thing, we're all trusting people, but this happened when I was mayor the last time. Again, it was brought to my attention, and it was something that was happening in Burr Ridge, and our great police department ended up solving it, but not until some problems occurred. You get in now with Uber or Lyft or whomever, and everybody wants to be friendly, and you're going on vacation, and you're proud you're going on vacation or wherever it is, or a business trip, and you're asked, how long are you going to be away? Where are you going? You know, and then all of a sudden, gosh, you come back and something's happened in your house. And now that's not to say Uber or Lyft or anybody is bad, but sometimes there are some bad people out there, and if you give them too much information, people take advantage of it. So part of tonight with this great forum here is to give people information so they can protect themselves, because to your point, you have to be, skeptical, and we have to stop the crime from ever happening, because by the time it does happen, sometimes we just can't make it right. We can almost never make it right. We can make it better, but we cannot ever make it right. So, any more questions?
I'd like to just go on to your surveillance of the subdivisions, ours is one, Devon Ridge. And we haven't had one crime since our cameras have been moved up to the police station.
Well, good to know that, because I've been pushing to have more communities do that.
We did have surveillance cameras, but then the president would have to keep the tape, and so it's much easier for the police department.
Yeah, and we will try to do whatever we can and encourage the homeowners and the subdivisions to do that. We absolutely want to do that. Sure.
One last thing, if you're going to go on vacation, please go to our website, and you can ask for a vacation watch, and there's a program, it's called Frontline. So you can enter all the information in, how long you're going to be gone, and this is secure. This is in our, it's for us. And what it does is, well, I've been assured by our IT it's secure. We've got a very robust firewall, trust me. But you can enter the data, and if you don't trust it, call us. We'll take the data over the phone, but we're going to put it in Frontline. So, and the reason for that is, when the officers go out on each shift, each one of them have beats that they're assigned to in town. And they have their responsibility to check your home. And when they check your home, they enter that they did check it, and then you're going to get an email saying that Officer Madden was at your house at 4 p.m., checked your home. So you get a record of that. So, and you could put in there, you have lights on timers. These are questions we used to ask over the phone before we had the system. Do you have lights on timers, which you should? You need to have lights on timers. You need to light up the perimeter of your home. We all enjoy a rural atmosphere, but driving through many towns at night, somebody could be standing 20 feet in front of you. We're not going to see them. So I always encourage sensor lights that go on. So please use that. Frontline, there's a lot of things available. Please visit our website.
Now, Judge McCluskey told you about how many judges we have in DuPage County, and all the other things that they do, and the other hours that they keep beyond their regular hours. Bob, how many lawyers are in your office, and how many is in your staff?
83 attorneys.
Okay.
83 assistants.
And so here's the point I want to make. Leadership starts at the top. Bob Berlin, the state's attorney for DuPage County, comes out to these events. He's got 83 lawyers. He could have sent somebody else, but he came, okay? Because he wants you to know how important this is. Remember that, because I know his schedule is filled in the evenings, and he goes out. He's there in the office during the day, and then he's out at night. You've got a very dedicated team of people here. Unfortunately, we have to know about law enforcement nowadays. These were things we never even thought about. When I was growing up in my neighborhood, we used to leave the doors unlocked. Nobody does that anymore, okay? So please appreciate what you have. I know you do, but we have a great state's attorney, we have a great police department, and we have a great judiciary because of people like that are in front of you. So. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that case you saw in Lyle with that woman's murder 40 years ago? Just kind of give us a little wrap-up, because I think that's just so interesting.
Sure. So this case involved a 16-year-old Downers Grove South student who was at a party back in 1976, and she didn't make it home that night. Her body was found the next day off the side of a road. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. The case went unsolved for 44 years. And fortunately, the police at the time did a very good job of preserving physical evidence, including her underwear. And years later, when we had the appropriate technology, we were able to extract a DNA profile from the underwear. And using genetic genealogy, which is people who upload their DNA into these websites, the police were able to create a family tree, and from there use good old-fashioned police work to ultimately find the person that was responsible for it, Bruce Lindahl, who's since deceased. He was actually killed while murdering somebody else. He accidentally stabbed himself in the femoral artery, and he died as a result. But really amazing police work, amazing technology. We had to exhume Lindahl's body, which required getting a court order with assistance from our coroner, Dr. Richard Jorgensen. But her father is still alive. And I know the police flew down and spoke with her father and her brother, who were very thankful. And I know people in the community were certainly relieved that the case was finally solved. It's a shame it took so long, but really just so many different agencies and different people never gave up on the case. And we're very fortunate. So it's something that we're looking into, and that was one of the reasons we did a press conference, is to ask the public for help. And we have gotten some tips that the investigators are working on, but nothing concrete yet.
Well, with that, Judge McCluskey, Chief Madden, State's Attorney Bob Berlin, thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for all your expertise. Thank you for all your public service. Especially you, Chief, to this great village of Burr Ridge. We're so fortunate to live here. With that, we're going to make sure this video gets around to the other communities so that they have the benefit of tonight. And so thank you all for coming, and we'll see you again.
Thank you, Mayor.